human consumption patterns directly impact our natural ecosystems, and the state of nature influences the availability and sustainability of resources for consumption. It's all about mindful consumption, and we do encourage consumers to be more mindful of their purchases by purchasing quality products that do last longer, and they support companies with ethical and sustainable practices. There's always this argument of sustainability versus profitability, but we can indeed have both. Slow action is better than no action, and you don't have to go green overnight.
Lindsey Coffey is the head of community engagement and impact awareness at EcoBranders, where she promotes sustainable and mindful action. A model and environmental activist, Lindsay made history in 2020 as the first US representative to win Miss Earth. With a background in political science and communications, she campaigns, speaks publicly, and lobbies on Capitol Hill to raise environmental consciousness.
Lindsay, if there's one message you'd like people to take away from this episode, what might it be?
One message that I really like to share is the great power that we have within the choices that we make. And we are not only people, but we are consumers, and we control market trends. We are constituents who control who represents us in office. And there is so much fear regarding our future, but why should we fear something that we are the ones who create? And it's our choices that we make where we feel one voice doesn't have an impact, but one voice can carry so far. And it is that voice, it is that choice that we make today that does shape our tomorrow. And there is a lot of despondency when it does come to carrying out change, but I want to share a quick fact with you. There was a study that was shared by BBC from a political scientist that ended up finding that we only need 3.5% of the population to create change. And that is something I believe is completely feasible, and it really takes the pressure off, and it is less scary. And that's also where the saying altruism is contagious comes from. And it's really just about knowing your power and being able to step into it. So we are the ones, again, who decide if we want to fall or if we want to climb. And I'm not saying that this journey is easy at all. I'm just saying that it is something that is completely possible.
For those who haven't encountered your work yet, perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I'm definitely, I wear many hats, and I do work as a fashion model. I've been in the fashion industry for over a decade now, but I really developed a passion for environmentalism, and my activism had really taken over. And I work with a ton of organizations such as World Wildlife Fund, Remake. I have boots on the ground in my activism. I also will virtually try and help raise awareness about the climate crisis. And
this episode is brought to you by Start With Values. If you'd like to reduce stress and increase fulfillment in your work and life, then check out startwithvalues.com. There, you'll be able to download the Values app, which helps you to discover your core values and bring them to life through micro habits. There is a values course so that you can learn about the science and practice of core values, and you'll be able to pre-register for my forthcoming book called Start With Values. I hope that these tools will enable you to achieve more fulfillment and make more meaningful decisions on your journey of life. Now back to the episode.
My overall goal is to impact others and inspire them to make a change in the world. And I also do that whether it's in the fashion realm or within business, where I am also the head of community engagement and impact awareness at EcoBranders, where I aim to help them transform the marketing and business sectors in order to reshape culture and create a greener and more sustainable world.
Was there a specific moment that you realized that you really wanted to become an environmental activist, or that you really cared about nature?
So I always say I was an environmentalist even before I knew what the term was. And that occurred when I was very, very young. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania in a town that had more cows than people, very, very small. And my next door neighbors were cows, literally. So I always had that connection with nature. And if I were having a hard time or I needed to just feel safe, I would go out and I would sit in nature and I would connect to my surroundings. And I would immediately feel at peace. And I didn't know that it was my emotional outlet at the time. But as I grew older, I also adopted a highway when I was in middle school, and I would pick up a litter on the side of the road when my friends were out having fun roller skating or by the pool. So I started my activism on a local level, and then it soon turned global. And my career as a model ended up helping me pursue that as well through my travels, and even had a journey through a competition called Miss Earth, where I became the first U.S. representative to win the international title of Miss Earth, where I competed against 82 different countries related to the climate crisis. So I had such a journey from that little girl just sitting in her yard, staring out at the forest before her. And it had evolved so greatly within time. And my passion and my love just grew deeper and led me to want to speak for her again, not just on that local level, but worldwide.
Amazing. Perhaps you could share a little bit about EcoBranders and the need to reshape consumer culture.
So we do live in a mindless consumption throwaway culture today. And when we speak of consumption, overconsumption, we also include manufacturing and sourcing in that because those are integral steps within product development that leads to consumption. And we have to change this culture because the negative impacts, I mean, they vary greatly, and there's such a range from resource depletion. For instance, the demand for fast fashion leads to the excessive use of cotton, water, energy. It strains our agricultural resources and our ecosystems. We have pollution, land, water, soil, air. We have biodiversity loss. We have social and economic inequalities and health impacts, deforestation. We live in a waste generation and our landfills are overflowing. We have 5 islands of trash known as the Great Garbage Patches. So why wouldn't we want to change that? And I'm very fortunate to have come across EcoBranders, who are an eco-conscious branded merchandise retailer with a mission to champion environmentalism and encourage sustainable conscious living. And what I learned from the promotional product industry, which is where EcoBranders lives, is directly connected to the overall fashion industry because everything that we see is branded merchandise, and it's a hidden environmental offender, the greatest one that contributes to this mindless consumption because it's something we don't really think about. So the products, they are used for promotion, and of course they can custom design their products where they can successfully build their brand because of course they are a business, but they're also, and they're sharing their message, but they're also simultaneously reducing their overall environmental impact, which is so beautiful. And so as a company, EcoBranders, as I mentioned, is aiming to transform both the business and marketing sectors. And they're showing that you can have purpose and profit while also reshaping that consumer culture. And it's shown through their product selection. And they have recycling efforts. They invest in carbon offset programs. They partner with organizations that include reforestation projects, renewable energy investments, CO2 reduction, ocean conservation. They offer eco-friendly packaging, transparency within their partner programs, as well as within their suppliers regarding the supply chain. And they also engage with consumers, educating them on the importance of sustainability and the options that they have. So they're definitely a leader in sustainability within the promotional industry and the fashion and textile industry. And we're just here to change the world.
I love it. I love it. And it makes such a difference when you purchase clothing that is sustainable, ethically produced. For example, this is made by a company called Outer Known. Have you heard of Outer Known?
I don't actually think I have.
It was founded by Kelly Slater, the world champion surfer. And
Oh,
the supply chain, everything is scrutinized, down to the fact that people in Sri Lanka who are producing the gear are living a good life, and the factories are sustainable. And the clothing lasts for decades. It's not, it's built, it's crafted with the best materials, and it's made in a way that it's a sustainable garment. It will last. I mean, I've had some clothing from them that was from their first round of production, and 7, 8, 9 years later, it's still perfect.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And so many people, especially when it comes to fast fashion and production like that, where the garments will fall apart and they end up in the landfill. But if you invest in quality premium materials, they end up actually lasting longer, which is also one of EcoBranders' mottos, buy less but better. And it ends up actually saving you money in the long run. So, and you also have an emotional attachment and a meaningful attachment to that product because it has a story behind it that people want to hear. And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's the ideal EcoBranders partner?
The strict product criteria that they do have in order to take a product on, they really like to look for companies that have that same shared value and really want to make a difference and an impact. And they also have the facts and the documentation and the certification to actually prove it. Because again, I'm sure you're familiar with greenwashing, but there are a lot of companies out there that don't practice what they preach, or they don't give you the documentation that you need in order to prove what they're saying is true and credible. And they kind of just use sustainability and their greenwashing tactics as just for optics, to try to kind of draw you in because sustainability does trend, and they really have no credibility behind them. So we really try to vet the brands that we do stand behind. And there are like Storm Creek, for example. They're an amazing company that really focuses on how they source their products. And they also have a very transparent supply chain where you can see where a product is either grown, whether it's organic cotton, how it is sourced, by whom it is sourced, and where they travel within transportation, because that's also another hidden environmental offender most people don't consider, is the transportation of those products and how it commits or emits carbon emissions. But we really like to focus on products that are either 100% organic, organic cotton, hemp. We have bamboo. There's non-virgin wood. So we do not contribute to deforestation in any way. And simply cutting down a tree just to cut it down to create a product. We're always either making recycled materials or materials out of recyclables, or things that you can actually upcycle at the end of the day. And it's really incredible, even some of the products they have, where they have pens that are fully compostable. And I think that's just absolutely remarkable. And the technological innovations today that we've seen, even when it comes to leather, we have vegan leathers that are made out of pineapple, apple peels, coffee grounds, banana peels. And it's fascinating to me. So it's a niche market, but it doesn't have to have a niche audience. And it's for everyone that wants to have a connection to nature and to a higher purpose. And so that's what we're really looking for when it comes to the companies that we bring on, and we want to have products to promote to the rest of the world.
And we'll link to EcoBranders in the show notes, of course. But is there a product selection available that people can browse through?
Oh, absolutely. So at EcoBranders.com, they have so many different types of products, whether it's apparel, office supplies. They have a lot of drinkware as well. Nalgene is a great water bottle company. Same with Elemental and Myrrh, which is spelled MIIR, such an interesting name, and all sustainable. And they also give you those certifications to back up that their environmental claims. One of my favorite things on their website is their search by impact feature. And you can search by the cause that you wish to support. And you can search by ocean conservation if you want to support climate change, if you want to support biodiversity, and you click on those tabs and it will bring up every single product that once purchased will support these partnerships in order to promote more biodiversity or to stop deforestation. And it's beautiful. And I feel it's very unique as well. And it really connects to the customer and gives them an easy way to not only just navigate the website, but help them really connect to the cause that they wish to support in such a very easy, user-friendly manner. And I think the search by impact or search by cause is one of the greatest features that they do have. And they also have fun products too, where it's not just household items or wellness items. They also have seed bombs and I love seed bombs. Do you know what those are?
A seed bomb? No, it doesn't ring a bell.
So it's just a ball of soil and seeds, flower seeds, and you literally just throw them outside wherever you want and flowers will grow where it lands.
Seed bombs. We need those in New Zealand. I'm sure someone has brought them here, but I'll check it out. No, I really love the fact that it's holistic. It's not just one dimensional. Climate gets a lot of publicity, but what people sometimes forget about is biodiversity and, microplastics and a lot of the other issues. And maybe climate can seem so overwhelming for many people that they almost go into kind of a freeze state, like, oh my gosh, we're doomed. But there's always something that you can do, right? And starting off by, choosing products that support biodiversity or clean up the ocean or reduce plastic. There are many, many things that you can do within your control. And it sounds like that's impact search allows you to, get more specific about the area you'd like to support.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also see there's so many more details too, where it tells you if this product plants trees as well throughout your purchase and links to the partner organization that is the exact cause that you're actually supporting. So it's an amazing feature. And I would encourage other companies and businesses to incorporate that because it does drive revenue because it really attracts customers and it's a unique feature that you can promote.
Yes, I was about to ask you about that. What are your thoughts on purpose versus profit, and can they coexist?
So there's always this argument of sustainability versus profitability, but we can indeed have both. And I understand this from a consumer perspective and also from the business side of things as well. But I like to share there's numerous ways. And this is also what I enjoy because we do live in an age where we have a lot of technological advancements and there are options that we have to incorporate strategies into our business model that works for us. So it's just not a one-off situation. It's very flexible and you can choose the option that best works for you and the business that you wish to run. So you can implement proper waste disposal practices, energy efficient manufacturing, optimize your resource consumption, which saves money while also mitigating environmental risks that you may have to clean up in the future, as we have seen that even with the most famous BP spill with the oil in the ocean. So if you're already taking these green strategies, incorporating them, that's also mitigating that risk where you're preventing the loss of money that you're going to have to clean up an issue that you caused later on. And also creating transparency within your supply chain and partnering with ethical and sustainable suppliers increases your brand's reputation, which does attract new and loyal customers. And well, for example, EcoBranders, as I mentioned, they do offer transparency through their supply chain, through those verifiable certifications, and they do partner with those nonprofit environmental organizations, which show the positive and global impact they create. And that draws people in because we also see that it's trending where young millennials, Generation Z, they're wanting to make purchases that are purposeful and connect themselves to a brand that has a higher purpose. And being able to attract also those mindful consumers, some are even willing to pay a bit of a premium to be associated with a purposeful business. And that just also gives you a competitive advantage, attracting those mindful consumers. And then also, there's a theory that in the long term, businesses prioritizing ESG strategies will outperform those who do not. And those supporting factors include that risk mitigation I mentioned, the cost savings, opening up a new market opportunity and attracting those new customers, increasing your brand reputation and your customer loyalty. And you also have access to more capital, which we've already seen trending because, again, sustainability is trending, which I don't think is a trend. It is here to stay, but we see that happening already. And it's because companies with strong ESG performance are seen as less risky and more resilient. So that is why they have that. They have more access to that capital and they have more investors. So there's so many things to it that a lot of people don't really know about because a lot of businesses are focused on their short-term goals rather than what they can do and how they can progress in the long term.
And younger people, Generation Z, would prefer to work for purpose-driven companies. In my experience, that's what I'm finding. What about you?
Yes. So employee retention, through studies that I've also seen, everyone wants to work for a purposeful, meaningful business because it's something that they're proud of, that they connect to, and it just stands for something greater than themselves. And it's a healthier environment to work in. So working for a purposeful business also helps, yes, that employee retention. And it also contributes to increasing the, your access to a greater talent pool. So you're also more interesting to people that are looking for employment. So not only are you keeping your employees, you're really attracting new ones.
For a business out there that's considering making the shift, what would be some of those steps? Is it first defining your purpose, or is it first starting to take an audit of what we're doing and how we're doing it? Or do you think, is there a structured process for making the change? Or do you just start somewhere and gradually improve your operations? Maybe you don't have to make it's like New Year's resolutions. Most of them fail by the 1st of February. Maybe it's a case of small changes in the right direction.
That actually reminds me also of the term green wishing. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, I like it. Tell me more.
So yes, there's greenwashing, which is, so the difference between greenwashing and green wishing, the biggest difference is intention. So greenwashing is when a company portrays themselves as being more sustainable than they are. And green wishing is when a company genuinely wants to create a positive impact, but they kind of lack the awareness, the knowledge to really know how. And again, it falls back onto that intention. And so I would make sure that companies can avoid that green wishing. And in order to do that, you have to have a plan and a strategy to actually be able to reach the goals that you're setting for yourself. So slow action is better than no action. And you don't have to go green overnight. It's really difficult and challenging to do so and to do it in the proper manner. So depending on the business that they are, also just throwing this out there, carbon offsetting, investing in a program that carbon offsets your emissions, that is one of the easiest things that you can do to incorporate just a greener strategy into your business model, because you actually don't have to change a thing. That is the easiest thing to do because you don't have to make any changes to how you're running your business. All you're doing is really, it's a form of profit sharing where you're investing in a carbon offset program that helps you with carbon neutrality of how you are running your business. I don't believe in companies just doing that sole strategy and claiming that they're green because, again, they're not changing anything within their business model. But that's a great place to start in order to help decrease your environmental footprint. But I would take it slow, and depending on the type of company that you have and what you're passionate about, you can also make it personal to you and to the people that work at the company, what you want to invest in, what impact you want to make, and start there. Just consider the impact that you wish to see in the world and see how you can involve yourself in that. And whether that is even starting off with profit sharing into a partnering organization that helps alleviate carbon emissions in the air, or aids in ocean cleanups to kind of decrease the ocean pollution that we're suffering from, that you see so often while you're surfing. And just start there to get familiar with it, and also see if you have any options to incorporate renewable energy into your manufacturing, if that's something that they have, and what relates to their customer, who is their main audience, and what are they passionate about? Or if you're a local business, what are the impacts in your local community that you're suffering from that you can possibly help engage and alleviate? So there's so many different ways to approach it, but I would definitely say starting by figuring out what your passion is and how you want to be portrayed as a business, and really start there by partnering with other organizations that are focusing on the same impact that you wish to make.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the carbon offsetting is a great entry point. In fact, my first entrepreneurial venture, and it was way too early. It was in 2007, maybe six. I started a carbon offsetting system where we were planting trees in Australia to offset web server carbon emissions. It started to catch on, but I gave up too soon, which is a reason that I got into the whole resilient space to help others not give up when they've got one of those important ideas. But there are many, many places people can go. Can you talk a little bit about ethical versus unethical marketing?
Yes. So I feel marketing is such an important part of especially just promotional products in general and just the formation of our society. But to focus on just the products that we buy and consumption, there is an emotional and psychological tie to consumption. And most purchases are for instant gratification, and they're always temporary. They're usually driven by ego, emotion, or some type of void, which is an emptiness or thoughtlessness. And we have to, in order to look at the emotional affiliations or the afflictions, buying something versus not buying something. When we purchase something, it's also known today as also a form of retail therapy. And I heard also recently this term called dopamine dressing, where whenever you're purchasing something and you try on this new outfit that you really like, it's a hit of dopamine and it makes you feel good. It raises your mood and it's a good place to be. It's labeled also as this joy economy where we're really just searching for those dopamine hits, whether they're temporary or not. And it's created this form of materialism, and it just focuses on material possessions and the pursuit of acquiring more and more things, which are actually driven by underlying emotional insecurities, or they are led to believe that purchasing this will lead to happiness or social acceptance. And it's compensating just for a lot of unmet emotional needs. And when we do not purchase something, then that's also associated with FOMO, the fear of missing out if you're not participating in a trend. It contributes to low self-esteem, resentment of people who do have what you want, and overall, just a lower self-worth. And we ask ourselves, why do we associate these material things with our worth? And that's whenever we start to look at the marketing process, because what is it that marketers are doing? When they're trying to sell something, they offer you an emotional story connected to that product, telling you that, okay, you are going to be happy with this. It's going to increase love in your life. You're going to be more fulfilled. They're trying to evoke an emotional response. And again, it's always a temporary one because it's coming from the wrong reasons, the wrong place of emotion. It also is associated with social status. How many times have you seen a brand convey a message that their products will elevate a consumer's social status or make them appear more desirable to other people? And we also see a lot of symbolism and identity associated with marketing tactics. And look at a lot of high fashion designer brands, Louis Vuitton. If you have the LV symbol on some of your clothing or the Gucci label, you are perceived as a certain type of person that is associated with those type of high-end luxury brands. So that also ends up being incorporated into a perceived value and of who you are as an individual and what your worth is, how successful you are, or how accomplished that you are. And that is the consumer culture that marketing has really created. So that's how I define the unethical side of marketing. And in order to make it ethical, for example, even the emotional appeal, you can have an emotional connection to what you're buying, but for the right reasons. Instead of having that temporary gratification, I ended up purchasing a bag that I don't need. I have so many bags, didn't need another one, but I saw it and it was at a market. So it was more on the local level, and so it was more niche and exclusive, which is actually really cool to be able to discuss with somebody or share with somebody when you're talking about the bag. And I found out that they were made of hemp, and they were crafted and handmade by women in Nepal. And the proceeds go back to the women who made it. So I didn't need a bag. I wanted this bag because I thought it was cute. And then I ended up learning that there's a story behind it, something that I also support, and wanted to buy this bag. So I felt like my hands were tied now because it had such a cool story with it. And I was excited to share that with other people. So if somebody just commented, "Oh my goodness, I love your bag," I'm like, "Oh, wait till you hear the story behind it. It's made of 100% hemp. It goes back to the women of Nepal who made it." And it was a beautiful connection now I have to that bag. And it's not temporary. That's something that stays with us. So there's so much power behind marketing. And if we can transform this culture and really create marketing and focus on the ethical side of it, that will really help create longevity within businesses as well. Because again, we're not focusing on the temporary, we're actually developing meaningful connections. And it will eliminate this throwaway culture that is actually destroying our planet, and it's hurting ecosystems, communities, and really impacting a lot of underdeveloped communities in countries that are the ones even making these products, where it's really a form of modern day slavery. So it is completely world changing to be able to invest in ethical marketing practices.
And it's a call to action for people to just step back and think about, what is this ad that I'm watching trying to trigger? What emotions? Because, drinking a fizzy drink is not going to make you happy. And the people in the ad probably don't drink that drink, to be honest. And, that car is the hedonic treadmill that you mentioned. After a week or two, it's just, I'm getting around. It loses its appeal. Yeah. Whereas if you focus on, it's kind of like Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, it's why you do it. And so for advertisers, rather focus on, we're doing this for a reason. This is part of our purpose, join our movement. And I think a lot of companies are shifting in that direction.
Yeah. I see that there is a change and there is a shift. And also some people get despondent because it's not as quick of a progression as we wish to see. But again, progress is still progress. And it doesn't take much to actually see change. And it's something that I use to help create more hope within people that, again, are a little despondent with it. But it's an amazing thing that we're seeing. And it really does lead to just more revenue within your business, because you're creating products that have a beautiful story that is a true connection. They are made of better quality material. They are sourced ethically, or they're actually completely circular, where it's not contributing to any type of waste. And it's also not hurting your brand's reputation, where when something does break down, immediately it's going to go into the garbage. And you're not going to want to market your company when someone's throwing away their trash and they end up seeing your product and your logo in the garbage can. So you also get a lot of free advertisement marketing with people who genuinely like your product and are wearing it around and talk about it. It's a lot of free marketing that you get.
Yeah. Can you unpack that concept of circular economy? What does it actually mean? Because you hear it, but many people might not have encountered it or fully understand.
So a circular economy is really connecting everything from the beginning of the life cycle of a product all the way to the end. And typically we're in a linear manufacturing model where it's production, purchasing, buying, and then disposal. Yeah. Now, a circular economy ends up taking from the disposal, and instead of just throwing it into a landfill, that is going to be either recycled into a new material, or it's going to be upcycled into something else, or it's going to be completely broken down and biodegrade within nature. So there is no trace left, and it creates a fluid loop, if you will, of just circularity. And that's something that we really have to see more of. And it's going to be such a integral part of change, because when companies are manufacturing products, they end up just pushing out their product with no concern of the end of life of that product. And they also are not educating consumers on how to properly dispose of that product. So there's an unfair burden that falls on a lot of consumers when it does come to end of life, when it comes to recycling, which a lot of consumers don't even know how to properly recycle. And it's taking away that need to know how to really dispose of that item, because it won't have to be disposed of by normal definitions. It will, again, either be recycled and broken down, or it will be upcycled and turned into something else.
Companies like Patagonia do such a good job. They actually repair your wetsuit. If you take your wetsuit to them, they'll repair it for you so that it lasts an extra 3-4 years rather than buying a new one. Outer Known that I mentioned, they sell pre-loved clothes on their website because they last for so long. It makes so much sense when you think about it, but it's just time and awareness, I suppose, before other companies start adopting similar practices.
Absolutely. And Patagonia is one of the companies that I use as an example of also a business that can be sustainable and profitable. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they're a great example at that. And also being able to repair products that they sell. A lot of luxury brands do that as well. So there are some green strategies incorporated into high designer goods. And that is also a strategy that other companies can integrate as well. And I even offer just take back programs where instead of just throwing away that item, you just return it to the store that you purchased it from.
Talk to me about the interconnectedness of nature. What are your thoughts?
I also think a lot of people fail to realize how interconnected life is. And that's also a circle, similar to a circular economy. Just life is a circle. And the interconnectedness between nature and consumption, it's a very complex relationship where human consumption patterns directly impact our natural ecosystems, and the state of nature influences the availability and sustainability of resources for consumption. So overconsumption leads to the rapid depletion of natural resources, threatening their availability for future generations and impacting economic stability and growth. We have biodiversity loss that weakens ecosystem resilience and reduces the natural services that they do provide, such as pollination. And, we have to save the bees, which they're amazing. There's water purification and also climate regulation. And the production, the use, the disposal of these goods, they affect wildlife because they're generating pollution, especially if they're improperly disposed of. They're affecting natural habitats, and they're also affecting human health. And natural ecosystems, they regulate climate, they control floods, they purify our water, they detoxify our waste. And their overconsumption and environmental degradation also weakens the services that they provide, and it leads to the increase of natural disasters and the increase of health risks. So I know that's very technical, but one of my favorite step-by-step examples of seeing the circularity within life, you can emit carbon into the air, whether that's driving to work or you're manufacturing a product. That carbon is then absorbed by our oceans. And when our oceans absorb too much carbon, it then produces ocean acidification. Now that water then evaporates and it's stored into our clouds. And that stored water then falls down as rain, acidic rain, which starts to water our crops and it contaminates our crops. So everything that we do, every action that we take has a consequence, and it's up to us to determine if that consequence is positive or negative. And that's also why I stress the power of choice and understanding the power within the choices that we make, because every decision that we have is going to have that impact. And that example, I feel, is a perfect one, being able to relate how every step in life has another one following shortly after. And it's just going to loop around and impact you in ways that you really least expect it.
There is power in our choices, and yet so many people feel somewhat powerless. As I said before, they feel almost frozen by the sheer overwhelm of the challenges that they're hearing about. Any tips for people who just want to start making slightly more informed choices? Does it start with going to the supermarket and just reading the labels, or where would you advise someone to start their journey?
Reading labels is actually a great place to start, because even with our agricultural sector, there is a lot of waste, whether it's water waste, if it's pollution, deforestation, and being able to make smarter choices even at the grocery store, knowing that you're purchasing meat from a more humane and ethical farm, that will also have a great impact. And it's being aware of the options that you have and also the impacts that other choices are creating. It's really a game changer. And I also say the first step towards change is through awareness, just to educate yourself on the choices that you can make. And it's all about mindful consumption. And we do encourage consumers to be more mindful of their purchases by purchasing quality products that do last longer, and they support companies with ethical and sustainable practices. And by supporting and buying from business that do prioritize environmental sustainability, also fair labor practices, because again, I mentioned there's a lot of modern day slavery going on with the garment workers producing these goods, and focusing on companies that support social responsibility. That is where we will see a lot of change, because consumers really underestimate the power behind their purchases, because they are the ones who control market trends. And it's all about supply and demand at the end of the day. Whatever you demand, companies do have to supply. So if you take away that demand for very unethical products, harmful products, they're not going to supply that for you. So that's why there is so much power that one person can have, because it does create that domino effect, and it can completely break the system and rebuild it. And it falls again just back on the choices that we make and the awareness surrounding those choices. So the mindful consumption, you can also focus on supporting government regulations and policies of companies to encourage them to have corporate responsibility, because again, we're not only consumers, we're constituents. And so our voice is in our voting, and to vote for a politician with an environmental agenda is a great place to start. And supporting those regulations while also possibly boycotting or protesting within activism those who are not supportive of those strategies, and raising awareness and educating others on what you have learned, and encouraging that circular economy. So there's so many ways that we can incorporate sustainability within our own lives, within the lives of our family and friends, and also on a wider scale through our the legislative process, and affecting companies and corporations across the spectrum.
And for people who have adopted retail and consumption almost as a therapy, you mentioned the dopamine rush. What could they do just to unravel some of these habits where consumption has almost become part of their identity? They love new things, fast fashion. If they said, where should I begin? Is it with introspection, with actually, maybe a meditation practice, which a lot of people wouldn't associate with uplifting environmental consciousness, but sometimes you need to start within, right?
Yes, I completely agree. And that's honestly one of the most difficult things I feel a person can do, is to really take a moment and become introspective and ask yourself why I do the things that I do. And it's not only that form of mindfulness within your purchases, but it's the mindfulness within yourself. And not only are we disconnected to nature, a lot of us are disconnected to our own bodies, our own minds, our spirit. And in order to really change our behavior, change our habits and way of thinking, it's about incorporating that internal awareness and having an intention set that you want to be better and your actions want to do better. And that is a very challenging process because a lot of people sit in a place that is driven by ego and insecurity. So it takes a lot of vulnerability and patience and grace with yourself in order to simply get to know yourself on that deep level. But that is the only way that you're going to be able to actually make changes that last, because you're going to be able to separate yourself from your ego and your egoic behaviors and egoic desires to understand what's really important, understand what you need simply as a human being, and how to manifest that and attract that and portray that to the rest of the world. And it's a very intense journey. I've been on it. I'm still on it. And you're going to definitely screw up along the way. It's going to be difficult where you're not going to want to do it anymore. But at the end of the day, everything is about intention. And if you have the intention to become the best version of yourself, then eventually you will get there. And it's about not giving up on yourself and knowing that you're worth it and you're worth the investment.
One of my favorite quotes is by Alan Watts, and he said, just as an apple tree apples, the earth peoples. And I love that because he follows up by saying, you're not alone here. You're part of this, and you should feel part of this. And I think that's the missing ingredient. Sometimes people feel so disconnected from not just themselves, but from nature. Perhaps you could share some tips for people reconnecting with nature.
One of my favorite things to do is grounding, and it's a technique that you can do in multiple ways. My favorite is just the proper grounding where you're just boots off, socks off. You're just like becoming one with nature and your surroundings, because we are part of nature. That is our first home. That is where we come from. And it's such a just connective experience where I even prefer to do it by myself. And I will either be barefoot or I'll kneel down and I'll have my hands in the dirt. And it's a very grounding experience. But grounding can also be just even sitting in nature, keep your shoes on and just taking it all in and focusing on the present moment, because so many people live either in the past or they're living in the future and they fail to live in the present. Whenever you're in nature, that's where you're living in that present moment within your surroundings, within your environment. You're hearing the birds chirp, you're watching the insects and the squirrels go by, and you're feeling the energy that comes from within the soil and from within the life around you. And also there's plant therapy, which is also can be a form of grounding if you are just walking through a garden or you're planting your own. And there's also, you can even have just plant therapy within your house, your apartment as well. Because I know being in New York City, a lot of people have apartments and they don't have access to the outdoors. Buying more plants and keeping them, in your apartment is also a great step to make. And yeah, it's just being able to connect to the outside world in any way that you can. And it's a beautiful experience that is a reflective one. And I think that's the first step to being able to be at peace with yourself and to calm your mind and to overall ground yourself. Do you have any tips as well? I'd love to hear.
Oh, thank you. Very similar. Go spend some time in a green space. For me, that always reconnects me, whether it's a park, but ideally a forest. But I realize that not everyone can get into a forest. Where I live in New Zealand, there are many. So I try and go for a run most evenings around sunset. And there's a little bit of a forest track up a mountain, and just you experience a sense of awe. And when you experience awe in nature, I mean, coming back down, I just feel fulfilled every single time. And it makes you not only a better person, but it makes you want to have more of an impact in a positive way. I think it's a driving force with everything I do. And it's always those moments in nature that bring on that feeling of this journey is worthwhile, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's just that energy, that exchange in energy. It's always, nature never depletes you. It always charges you. And it just being in it and being in that, the presence of life, it's absolutely remarkable. And it'll also distract you from a lot of the typical daily worries, the work worries, the relationship worries, and it just grounds you in the present moment.
Yeah. And for those who need scientific or some kind of, those with logical, analytical minds, just watch an episode of the Huberman podcast or something like that. And in fact, the morning routine is go outside, stand on the ground barefoot, let the sunlight enter your eyes. If you need a really technical reason why, just follow the science. It shows that spending time in nature, getting sunlight in your eyes, breathing properly is going to improve your well-being, and it probably will improve your overall life experience.
Absolutely. I've also read studies where nature therapy, it decreases stress, anxiety, depression. It strengthens your immune system. Like, it's absolutely incredible. And it's a shame the society and the culture that we've created where it really does disconnect us from nature. And in the process of destroying it, it's something that we need in order to exist in a healthy manner, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah. What are you excited about going into the future, thinking about your projects and things on the horizon?
Well, overall, changing the world, but that's a very, very distant goal at the moment. And again, just a dream. So, but that is something that I look forward to most, is being part of the foundation to change and assisting other organizations and partnering with other nonprofits to really help share the mission and spread awareness and create that impact. So that's always my number one, is just to change the world, which is such a vague, over the top goal. But I'm looking forward to partnering with even more organizations that are making a true difference. As mentioned, I am an ambassador with World Wildlife Fund and a fellow with Remake, where I do lobby on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., advocating and pushing for certain policies that we want to implement within our legislative branch, and have them really change the business sector as well. And I truly believe that the greatest solution to any crisis is within our legislative branch. And that's why I really appreciate being able to go to DC and advocate for a policy or share the story of a community or my community that's suffering, and really just try and make that impact on such a legislative level that's going to have worldwide global change. So I always look forward to doing that every single year. And I always have little projects here and there that I try to, whether it's focusing on hydroponics, which I think is really, really interesting and cool. Have you ever heard of hydroponics?
I have, yes.
It's basically, the way I like to explain it to avoid the technicalities, it's just growing plants on water. And so it's really interesting and actually saves a lot of water as well. So I'll invest in some projects whenever it's focusing on hydroponics, and I'll do some smaller projects where we're focusing on litter cleanups. And then we also speak at events and seminars in order to initiate communal change worldwide. So there's a ton of projects I always look forward to, but the end goal is always to assist in seeing that change that we all wish to see.
Excellent. Thank you for all the work and energy. It's not always easy, and I'm sure you're met with great resistance from time to time. So keep on that journey. It will pay off, and it takes people like you with a clear mission to ultimately align forces and make the change that we all want to see. So much appreciation. How can people follow your work if they'd like to check out some of these projects or follow you on social media?
You can visit my website at lindsey-coffey.com, and Lindsay and Coffey is spelled EY. And my social handles, majority across the board, are at Lindsay Marie Coffey. And if you're also interested in EcoBranders or want to find me there, you can go to EcoBranders.com, and their social media is also at EcoBranders.
Excellent. So for those who stuck with us all the way to the end, any final thoughts?
So one, message that I would like to share is focusing on the power behind the choices that we have as consumers, as constituents, as just people, and knowing that your choices and your voice can be heard loud and far, and not to become despondent thinking that there is no hope, because there is, and we don't need to have the entire world behind us in support. All we really need is just 3.5% of the population in order to create real change. And that was a study shown by BBC after this political scientist, and her name is escaping me. But when I found out we only need 3.5% in order to create change, that's something that I believe is completely feasible. And it's really up to us to decide if we sink or swim, if we run or if we fight, if we fall or if we climb. And I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying that it's possible. And it's difficult, but it's just not as hard as you think.
Lindsay, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure connecting. And everyone out there, please do click the links in the show notes, connect, follow Lindsay's work, and get on board. There's small things that you can do at any point in time. So just get started. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.